Croeso friends, welcome back to Opus Elenae, where we complete our outfits. This is the last installment of the Soft Apocalypse summer series, and today we are covering what is left of our body, the legs. From my extensive media and Pinterest research, the generic apocalypse outfit consists of a tank top or three, a wrapped hood scarf thing, arm warmers or some other kind of wrist wrapping, and poofy pants. So obviously I'm going to make another pair of Orlin's pirate pants. For the other project, I'm going to be focusing on another aspect of the solar punk and this channel's philosophy, and remaking an older garment into a skirt that's not only more relevant for my wardrobe, but adjustable so that it will continue to be wearable for a long while. I'm pretty excited about getting into the engineering aspect of that later in the video. I feel I've been quite clever in problem solving. So everyone go grab your cuppa. Today I'm drinking rosy cotton from Tabletop Teas, iced because it's still a frillion degrees out. I'm not usually a fan of apple teas since they're often paired with cinnamon, but rosy is a decaf black tea packed with all kinds of berries and just a bit of basil to cut the sweetness. And that really makes all the difference. And since it's caffeine free, I can drink it well into the afternoon and evening. Let's get into it. Since I already have a pair of black pirate pants, I dug into my stash and found this cool dark brown linen. I really love this color. Most browns are too warm toned for my coloring and aesthetic. I am making some changes to the pattern, starting with the elimination of side seams. This means no side seam pockets, but don't worry, I have a fix for that later. First, I'll trace one half of the pattern and then the other using the registration marks I made at the top and bottom of the leg. I'm also folding down the top of the pattern to the next cutting line. I love my black pants, but I find that the crotch seam sits just a little low for swanning about in summer with no thigh rub, so I'm shortening these just a little bit. I'm also not adding any length to the legs. I want them to be a little more blousy at the hem. First, I'm sewing the crotch seams together and then the inseams, making sure to stop at the end of the traced lines rather than sewing all the way to the end of the fabric. This will allow me to straight stitch both seams at once and then serge them both. I'm taking a break from sewing the pants to address the pockets. I've been wanting an excuse to make embroidered patch pockets on a garment for a while, and this project is a perfect excuse. I want something flowing and sinuous that ties back to the whole solar punk theme, so I'll start by drawing the pocket outline and then starting to sketch in the design, a swirl of ginkgo leaves. I chose ginkgo for several reasons, not the least of which is that they're darn cool looking. They're also one of the oldest tree species on the planet, with fossil ginkgos that are basically identical to the modern plants dating back to the Jurassic. I love the idea of this plant bridging the past and the future. To transfer the design to my fabric, I'm using the same prick and pounce method that I used on my embroidered reform dress way back when. I'm pricking small holes along the line of the design with a needle, making sure there is a hole at each intersection of the lines. At home, I have a felt pouncer that I use with chalk or charcoal dust, but I didn't think to bring it with me. Instead, I'll make do by shaving down my tailor's chalk with snips and gently pushing the dust through the holes with my fingers. Then I'll connect the chalk dots with a white gel pen and do the whole thing in reverse for the second pocket. After the design is transferred and I have covered partner's dining room table with dust, it's time to hoop up the fabric. Normally, I like to use a rectangular frame like a scroll or slate frame, but since I wanted to bring this project on the plane with me, I opted for the much sturdier and smaller hoop instead. I'm using 2 different stitches to create different line weights in this design, the thicker outline and the thinner veins. The outline will be a stem stitch, a kind of back stitch where the double lines of thread are on the right side of the fabric, and a twisted, ropey look is achieved by each stitch starting on the same side of the previous one. The veins will be stitched in holbein or double running stitch, which is a simple running stitch in one direction and then another running stitch back up the same line, filling in the gaps. Once the embroidery is finished, I will cut out the pocket fronts and backs. I could make these a single layer of fabric, but I'd rather line them, which will protect the back of the embroidery and make the pocket sturdier. It will be a simple bag lining, stitching along the fold lines, leaving a small gap in one side, and then turning the pockets right side out and pressing them. You may remember from my last pirate pants, but the gathering at the waistband was my least favorite part by far. It was hard to make the gathers even, given the relatively small difference in length between pants and band. So this time I'm going to try something different. Instead of gathering, I'm going to make a series of evenly spaced tiny pleats. The additional gathering will come from the elastic waistband. After the pleats are sewn and pressed, I can figure out where to place the pockets. I thought about waiting until I had elasticized the waist for a potentially more accurate placement, but I thought that sewing the pockets on might be easier without the elastic. I'm sewing the pinned pockets down, making sure to reinforce the top of the seam where the most stress will happen. Then, while I'm already at the machine, I'll sew the casings at the hem and the waistband. I'm going to put elastic at the hem instead of a drawstring, both because it's easier and because the side seam isn't there to make the openings for the casing. The last step is to add all of the elastic and a drawstring at the waist. I'm using an unbleached cotton twill tape to match the embroidery. Thank you to all of my current and continuing Ko-fi members. As always, your support and the support of my croissant army makes it easier to do what I do and to provide quality content for everyone. Thank you so much. Stick around after this brief commercial break to see me make the skirt. For this project, I'm reusing the skirt portion of an old Tudor kirtle that someone gave me ages ago. It consists of a trapezoid for the front and 2 right trapezoids for the backs. When sewn together, it's a bell shape with the fullness concentrated at the back. My plan is to cut off the top few inches for the waistband to preserve the circumference of the hem. In keeping with the original kirtle style, I will leave the front section flat and then make knife pleats to either side of that. The center back will have a small section of pleats to either side of the seam, and then I'll leave the area between the pleated sections flat. I'll attach ribbon ties here and here at the end of the front pleats, and when those are tied, that will pull the skirt tight, folding the unpleated sections inward. In order to make sure that the ends of those folds will stay put during wear, I'm also going to add interior ties to the end of the fold and the waistband at the side for added security. First, I'll need to figure out how much I need to cut off from the top of the skirt for the waistband, which, by my incredibly scientific methodology, will be about 5 inches or 13 centimeters. In order to give the waistband enough structure to stand up to my ridiculous engineering idea, I'm going to be interfacing it with this 1.5 band roll waist interfacing to match the width of my ribbon. It's very stiff, as you can see. I really like using it to prevent waistbands from collapsing during wear. Once I have the waistband cut and trimmed up, I'll mark where the side seams should fall, since the waistband is all one piece. Next, I can sew up the one seam I ripped ages ago when I was trying to figure out what to do with the fabric. The pink fuzz at the seam is from the lining when this was a skirt, which incidentally was the fabric my first London hood was made of. Then I'll serge all of the seams since they weren't finished in any way. I'll pin the side and back seams and then the areas of the skirt that will remain flat, and then I'll use the divide and conquer method to distribute the remaining fabric evenly for the pleats. I ended up fussing with the pleats a couple of times, but once I was satisfied with the placement, I sewed them in place. Time to install the waist interfacing. I'll start by measuring out and cutting 2 different lengths, one for the back section of pleats and another for the rest of the waist, from the start of the front pleats all the way around to the end of them. This will leave the unpleated back sections plain in order to more easily fold to the inside of the band. To keep the interfacing in place, I'm going to sew it to the seam allowance so that the band roll is between the waistband and the seam allowance. This means that the outside of the waistband will lay nice and smooth. Once that is finished, I can fold and pin the waistband before felling it into place by hand. Next, I'll finish the ends of the ribbon by melting them in a candle flame, and then I will attach them to the waistband by machine, making a rectangle of stitching for reinforcement. I'll make 2 belt loops with a thin silk thread from Aoinda Weaver. This is the same thread that I used to hand sew the Gulf War hood, using a buttonhole stitch to keep the ribbon in place when tied, alternating stitch directions to prevent twisting. I'll add the twill tape interior waist ties at the side seam and the inner fold, catching the interfacing but not the outer waistband layer. I'm actually interested in the potential viability of replacing these with buttonhole elastic instead. I may experiment with that in the future. And finally, I'll hem the skirt with a plain machine-sewn folded hem, and I'm done. Thanks for joining me today. I'm really quite pleased with my new post-apocalyptic pirate pants, especially the embroidery details. The skirt, I'm not quite sure about that yet. Since it's a design I haven't tried before, I'm gonna have to wear it a few times before I know whether or not it's a winner. Still though, I'm looking forward to the experiment. Thanks also for your patience with the last couple of videos. Life has been lifing extra hard lately, and I didn't want to take a break in the middle of the series, but now that we have weathered our soft apocalypse, I'm going to skip a video to take a deep breath and get a head start on the next one, which will be something medieval, I promise. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe and click the bell if you like taking your chances with YouTube notifications. If you want to find me on social media, I am still at Opus Elenae everywhere, or you can find me on my Discord. If you're interested in sewing, history, or a wonderfully supportive community, come join us at the link in the description. Until next time, be kind, do the work, continue supporting marginalized people, and keep creating. Hwyl.